We saw Richard Engels reporting from earlier today in Mariupol, which is roughly right here. It is in part of this disputed area that the Russians have now recognized. The Russians have recognized two oblasts. These are, for lack of a better word, provinces, Donetsk and Luhansk. Both Donetsk and Luhansk have cities in the center of them called the same thing, Donetsk and Luhansk. The area here in pink is the area that separatists have controlled for some time. Vladimir Putin is not concerning himself with the actual information here. He has declared both of these provinces or oblasts as Russian territory, and this is where he claims to be sending peacekeepers. There are 190,000 troops amassed all over here. This is the Russian border, but this is Belarus, which is a pro-Russian independent country, and there are Russian troops all the way through Belarus. This border at this side of Belarus, this is Poland. This is all NATO over here. This is where, as far as NATO troops go, there are no NATO troops in Belarus, obviously. There are no NATO troops in Russia, and there are no NATO troops in Ukraine. So this is the situation as it seems right now. Let's go to Courtney Kube, NBC News correspondent at the Pentagon. Courtney, there's a lot of information going on right here, but what we're not really clear on is what a Russian offensive would look like in this environment.
So according to a U.S. military and U.S. intelligence assessment, if you look at that map right behind you, Ali, if you take a line and you draw it straight from Kyiv straight down to Odessa and then all the way up to the border with Belarus, everything east of there, the assumption is that in this initial phase or tranche of this military campaign, that would be the target area. So right now, Russia, you mentioned that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 190,000 Russian troops all around that area, primarily around what we're looking at the map here, Kharkiv, the eastern side of the two breakaway areas, all the way down to the southern part. Then there's also a large grouping of Russian troops in the north. There's a little town called Klincy that's just north on the other side of the border from Belarus and then over into Belarus. There are a number of expected routes that Russia will take in this if they conduct this large-scale invasion. That I have to say, Ali, the officials who I'm speaking with here at the Pentagon and elsewhere in this town believe that that is the decision that Vladimir Putin has made, that he will conduct this large-scale invasion. It's just a matter of when. The plan is to start in the air, according to this military assessment, U.S. military assessment, start in the air, airstrikes, cruise missile strikes. There are a large number of Russian naval ships down in the Black Sea and in the Sea of Azov. They have missiles on them. They have the ability to launch into that area. In the first 45 minutes to 1 hour of this initial phase of this military campaign, they can take out a large amount of the Ukrainian military. Roughly 50% of the Ukrainian military and the most capable forces are in that area I laid out on the eastern half of the country. They can take out their ammunition, their lines of communication, literally their ability to communicate with one another and to physically reach one another by taking out bridges and roadways. They will likely target their aircraft, Ukrainian military aircraft, pock up the runways so that they can't take off. They likely will take out their air defense systems. So essentially, if this is the way that Russia carries this out, in the first hour or so, they will virtually cripple that half of the Ukrainian military there. They will own the airspace because they have air defense systems up in the north, in Belarus and in the western part of Russia, that will virtually take over the airspace there. Then, after that initial air campaign, we'll see artillery fire coming across the border. And then, after an hour, maybe a couple of hours in the early parts of this campaign, that is when we will most likely see Russian military forces rolling across the border into Ukraine. So again, this is a U.S. military assessment, but it's based on what they have been seeing Russia do, build up across that border in the last several months, Ali.
I want to put that map up of the oblasts, the provinces in eastern Ukraine, just for a second, because there are 2 points you're making here. One is, by Vladimir Putin recognizing those two places as independent countries, it's not a justification accepted by anyone else in the world, but there is an argument that he would make to say, hey, we're sending people in. They've requested our presence to go into these two places and protect Russians over there. But you're talking about things happening north of of Kyiv, coming out of Belarus, or coming out of Russia on the northern part. There's no global justification for going into an entirely separate country. At that point, is Vladimir Putin prepared to just give up the pretext of the idea that he's protecting Russian speakers over here and he's largely just going into Ukraine?
Yeah, so, I mean, he's actually been laying this out for months, for years, really. But in July, Vladimir Putin wrote this long op-ed, essentially, where he laid out everything that he wants to do. Taking back Ukraine is not only a national security objective for Vladimir Putin, it is a long-term strategic goal. So the notion that he is going to base this on any kind of global or international norms or standards that most other countries in this world would adhere to, I think is not likely to be the case here. I think that he is doing this based off what he sees as his priorities and his objectives. This is a legacy item for him, something that he hopes will last longer than even he is in power, however many more years that will be, in Russia. It's something that he sees as a long-term goal. So most likely, he will focus on that area, the breakaway area and beyond, all the way up. There's a river that kind of cuts that from almost the eastern half of the country, the Dnipro River. Most likely he will focus on everything east of there. But I should point out, the assessment is that he will then continue on to the western part of the country. So it's not as if the belief is that he's just going to focus and almost build two Ukraines or create two Ukraines. The belief is that his goal is ultimately taking back the entire country. He will just focus on that eastern half in the beginning. And when they go in, the assessment is that he will encircle some of these large cities, Kyiv, Kharkiv in the east, Odessa in the south, encircle them, isolate them, cut them off, and then they will move from there. He has a tremendous amount of personnel arrayed around the border right now. It is enough for not only for the initial invasion, but for an occupation force for some time.
All right, and I want to show you a little bit on the map here of what Courtney was just talking about. Down here in Odessa, remember, Russia controls Crimea. It's got ships in here that can take care of Odessa. This is the river that Courtney was just talking about, the Dnieper River. It splits Kiev into east and west. This part was traditionally ruled over or influenced by Poland, this part by Russia, and it is Russia that's concentrating on controlling this side of Ukraine. Courtney, thank you for that. We'll, of course, stay close to you. Courtney Kuby at the Pentagon for us.